Welcome to the final part of my very first fursuit tutorial. Today we'll be going from this to this in this amount of time. I'll be teaching you a lot in this video, so get cozy under a blanket with some water, get out your pen and pencil because this will be on the test. I'm just kidding. We're going to be starting by mapping out the back of the head with duct tape. Since the back of the head is completely symmetrical, if you want, you could just split it right down the center, but I just chose to map out the entire thing. There's no specific reason, that's just how I did it. Make sure that you mark everything with arrows so you know what direction the fur is going. Very carefully peel it off so that it doesn't stick to itself, and then lay it on the fur. If you remember, I showed you in part 1 how to cut creases so that the duct tape lays flat. It doesn't have to look perfect because those seams are going to be hidden and sewn anyway. Now we're going to clip it all together and sew it. Since the back of the head is pretty hard, you'll be able to feel the seams just a little bit through it, so try to make your seams as seamless as possible. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. Now we're going to map out the inside of the bottom jaw. When mapping out the inside of the head, try to make sure that it's as smooth as possible. I know it's pretty difficult trying to get your hand in there, but I promise you, you're gonna need it as smooth as possible when you cut out the fabric. Instead of using the duct tape to cut out 2 pieces of fleece, I decided to fold it over on itself so that it was one long piece without doubling up the duct tape. I basically mirrored it without cutting it. Remember the Velcro from last time? Keep that off to the side, we're going to need it in a minute. Now I'm going to sew the teeth into the lining. I showed you how to make these teeth in a separate tutorial. You can find that tutorial in the playlist below. Now that that's done, for extra security, I'm going to glue the lines on the very back of the teeth. You can't see these, it's just for extra security. Remember that Velcro I told you about? Well, you're going to need it again for the tongue. With the soft side of the Velcro, cut out an oval that'll sit directly behind the teeth. The adhesive on the Velcro is so strong when it comes to fleece. I found that whenever I put it on the lining for the bottom jaw, I don't need to add anything else. It also reinforces it when I put hot glue on the bottom, gluing it into the head. Before sewing, it already looks incredible. Tongue test, and it looks great. You could see how easily I pulled the tongue out of the mouth without anything catching. Now I'm making the bottom lip by sewing the fleece to the fur using a blanket stitch. I showed you guys how to do a blanket stitch earlier in the tutorial. I used this exact same method for the top jaw as well, I just did it off camera. There we go, bottom jaw done. Now it's time to work on the neck. I'm using my little mannequin friend, but you can use your own head and shoulders or your friend's head and shoulders. Just make sure that you wear a hat and put your hair up so you don't catch it on the duct tape. With duct tape, you're using a pretty sturdy 2D object to make a 3D pattern, so it's okay if you have some wrinkles here and there. Ultimately, fur is stretchy and it should be okay. I cut the tape in 3 different sections: the front neck, the back neck, and the center neck. Don't forget to add your arrows. Transfer it to the fur, and for the front and back, the 2 bottom pieces, make sure you give it an extra 2 inches all the way around. If you need to cut a little off, that's fine, but it's so much easier to trim a little off than it is to cut out an entirely new piece that's big enough. I previously mentioned this in my plush teeth tutorial that most adult index fingers are exactly 3 inches long, so you can use that to your advantage when cutting out 2 extra inches for the neck. Right now I'm clipping the center neck piece to the top back of the head that we sewed earlier. I'm going to sew that on my sewing machine to make sure it's extra sturdy. After a quick test fit, I'm going to glue it on with the hot glue gun I've been preheating this whole time. Now that it's all glued down, I'm going to use white upholstery thread and blanket stitch from the center all the way down to the side. The reason I start from the top center is just to make sure the shape is absolutely perfect so I don't have to cut and redo it. You don't necessarily have to do it like this is just the best way I've learned. Occasionally I'll find a small pocket of air while I'm sewing, and I'll come back in with the glue gun to glue it all the way down to make sure it's 100% durable and will last a long time. Now it's time to line the neck. I have a lot of different liners, but this time I'm using the Among Us liner. Instead of using duct tape to make an entirely new template, I just use the neck itself as the template. Just make sure that when you're drawing on the lining for the neck, that you don't accidentally also mark the neck fur. Now I'm going to sew 360 all the way around it. Fun fact, this suit is for a head and hand paw commission, so I'm also making hand paws off screen. If you want a tutorial for hand paws, just let me know. My commissions are also currently open for anything from a head all the way up to a full digisuit. And of course I need to add my business tag. I make a strip of glue right down the center and then sew all the way around it. Super durable, it'll stay there for years. I also add it on the cuffs of both hand paws. How else would people know if one of my creations is from Anarchy Productions? Previously in this tutorial, I think it was part 2, is where I showed you how to hand sew. If you want me to teach you how to hand sew entirely with a ton of different stitches, let me know and I'll make it a whole video. After sewing, make sure you brush out all your seams. Even though it's long fur, it's still pretty noticeable if you don't brush them out. A quick test fit to make sure everything looks good, and then it's time to start sewing. Remember in part 2, whenever I would mirror something, I'd draw a line down the center? Well, those lines I drew down the center are perfect for this. It makes it so much more easy and convenient to find the center of the neck versus the center of the head, and it makes everything super symmetrical and really easy. My cats love to be a part of things, and you can see both of them constantly walking around my workstation. Now it's time for the eyelids. Use clear packing tape and cover the entire eye. Then come back over with a black marker and mark around exactly where you want the eyelid to be. Make sure you also draw the eyeliner on the bottom of the eyelid. I'm using this really cool sparkle wrap I recently got. I got it for New Marie. I used red, this time I'm using gray for this commission. Use the scratchy side of the Velcro for the eyelids, that way they match up perfectly with the ones on the head. Peel off the protectant on the sparkles and then we're almost done. I ended up mapping out the eyeliner again with more clear tape. I just wanted to make sure it looked good on this new material. Make sure when you're adding the eyeliner, it's the soft part of the Velcro putting on the eyelids. That way it blends seamlessly with what's already on the head. Quick test fit, and I don't know about you, but I think these look fantastic. Making sure that everything is stable when I peel them off, and they are. Now it's time to make her hair. When brushing out the backing on the fur, brush hard. You're going to need to brush really hard for it to come through. Attach it with a blanket stitch, and then you're done.